Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, Brunning, Bruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Thursday. First full week of the preseason gets underway tonight. There are a trio of games, two of them being covered on NFL Network. If you subscribe or have access to such a thing, we'll have more games tomorrow and Saturday and then Sunday. So it is nice that games are here. We're also getting closer to draft season, so we're continuing through our redraft rankings. Going to be talking about our top 25 tight ends. And Dennis, did you feel the need to rank 25 tight ends?
Well, that was the assignment you gave me, Matt. I got to say, you're not my favorite professor right now. Once you got past about 14, 15, it was like, shit, man. Like, you can make a case for a bunch of them to be tight end 15 or tight end 30. But I don't know. It's there were some guys I don't feel strong. Let's just say I don't feel strongly about my, say, 15 to 25 rankings. They're like pickup sticks, man. I just threw them all out on the floor and I picked them up, and whoever I picked up first landed at 25th.
Well, at least something to look forward to as we shake that out here in a minute. But first, there is news. We'll start with quarterback news. Teddy Bridgewater coming out of retirement again to sign a 1-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I feel like that's good for the Buccaneers because we've often wondered what their backup situation is. The Browns, meanwhile, adding Tyler Huntley. That was good for a laugh right after we were off the air on Tuesday for me. He is their 5th or 6th quarterback, depending on how you do the math. But it turns out for preseason, they don't want to play Flacco, who is apparently quarterback 1, seems to have locked up the starter. And I guess Pickett and Gabriel are injured, so they did need kind of a body. They don't want Shedeur Sanders to have to throw every single pass out there. And only God knows what's going on with Deshaun Watson. But now there is talk they're potentially going to keep 4 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster. If you have 4 quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks. I'm not sure how you're feeling about the old Huntley signing.
I'm indifferent to the Huntley signing. It's been widely reported he's a camp body. We know who Snoop Huntley is, and he's a guy that is he's chasing, the 53rd roster spot on most teams. He wants to be an opportunity to be their emergency quarterback, just anything to stay on a roster. God bless the guy. He works hard, limited talent, but he's been sticking around the league for a lot of years, and he's familiar with Cleveland because he was there a couple years ago, and it's not like they've changed a whole lot. And so I don't hate the move for Cleveland, given that they've got some injuries to their quarterback room. It's always been a possibility, maybe even if you consider 50.1% to be a probability that they find a way to squeeze 4 quarterbacks on this team because they want to. It almost felt like they didn't think Shedeur would be there. They liked Dylan Gabriel a little bit better. And then when Shedeur was there 2 rounds later, or a round later, whatever it was, they were like, well, the room is a mess anyways. Let's take another shot on a quarterback. And Shedeur started a lot of games in college, and that counts for something when it comes to development. Dillon Gabriel. If Dillon Gabriel was 6'2", he'd have probably been a day 2 pick. Was he a day 2 pick? He went in the 4th round, didn't he?
Gabriel went in the 3rd round, so he was a day 2 pick.
He was a day 2 pick. He'd have been an early day 2 pick
if he was 6'2". I guess the strong rumors that have come out that because if you were watching the broadcast when Sanders went, both the Browns coach and GM looked like somebody had taken a shit on a plate and put it in front of them. And there was a lot of talk that was another Jimmy Haslam special that he called down and said to take Shedeur Sanders.
He's on the record saying it wasn't him, but
I mean,
I don't know that I believe it.
There's bad body language, and then there's whatever the hell was going on with the Browns draft team. I've seen people look happier than that going to prison. So right. It's interesting because I was listening the other day when I was driving home. They were interviewing the Cleveland beat writer on Training Camp Today. And he said he doesn't get that first depth chart they put out because everything he's seen, every time they put Sanders in, whether he's with the 1s, the 2s, or the 3s, he completes at least 70% of his passes. And by his estimation, he's clearly number 2 if you're watching the body language of the other players out there. They pick up their game when Flacco's out there. They pick up their game when Sanders is out there. He thinks it's pretty much set that it's going to be Flacco 1, Sanders 2, and Pickett's going to get moved, and they'll probably try to keep Gabriel as a developmental prospect. But he said he doesn't look very good, and he's had some really horrendous days at camp. So I don't know if it's just – I don't know what to make of their situation. I'm curious to see – we're going to see plenty of Sanders play in this first preseason game, and I'm not that interested in the Browns for the regular season, but I'm kind of interested to see what this game looks like.
Yeah, he should look okay. I don't think he's going to light the world on fire, but he should look okay. It's not like the defense is going to be running a whole bunch of sophisticated stuff against him. It's preseason. He's got a chip on his shoulder. We saw what that did for Tom Brady. No, I'm not saying he's the next Tom Brady. So don't, if you're going to quote this out there somewhere, please use the entire quote. But we see guys in various sports, manufacture this disrespect, and that's what drives them to be great. Maybe that happens with Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it doesn't, but that's where he's starting at now.
Other news, kind of surprising. Kyren Williams signing a pretty good money 3-year extension with the Rams. Makes me think differently about that situation. You and I have wondered as he's coming to the end of a rookie deal if he was just going to be a guy that they were going to continue to ride into the ground and move on to the next potentially being Blake Corum or Jarquez Hunter. Now it seems like they see him differently. Maybe the first running back they've seen differently since they had Todd Gurley. Getting that big extension also probably lowers my enthusiasm on both Corum and Hunter in Dynasty.
Maybe I'm lucky. I wasn't super high on Corum and Hunter to begin with. I think they felt like Jags, but then again, so did Williams. He was a 5th or 6th round pick?
He was a 5th round pick. They were both higher. Corum was 3rd round. Hunter, I believe, is 4th round.
So let's see. It hasn't gotten broke out yet on
the money
Spot Track. So it's 3 years, $33 million with $23 million guaranteed. So I don't know how it's distributed. It could be a 2-year deal with an easy out. It could be maybe an easy out after 1 year.
But it
Who
has to give
knows?
you the same kind of pause that it gave us when we saw James Conner get a contract extension last year after thinking, oh, they're getting ready to turn things over. Maybe not.
Well, Williams has played well, and his rookie year, he was more involved in the passing game than he was not rookie year, his second year when he became the starter. But they've kind of backed off on that, for whatever reason. He still plays in the passing game and catches some passes, just not quite as much as he did that first year. They got Devontae Adams and they've got Puka Nacua. So if Stafford's back holds up, they have potentially a pretty high-powered offense. And Williams is gonna dominate the touches. I don't see Sean McVay all of a sudden, splitting it 60-40 somehow. I think that it'll still be a heavy dose of Kyren Williams, and because he is a 200-pound back, it'll be focused more on the running game. They'll use their tight ends to catch the short passes, and they got Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, which are two very, very historically productive wide receivers. So I feel a little bit better in redraft, I guess, this year, drafting him. In Dynasty, this might be the impetus that you need to be able to move him for plus value in Dynasty. So if I have a team that maybe is aging, I'm getting ready to move into rebuild, now might be the opportunity in Dynasty to get out of the Kyren Williams business. Maybe you're a year too early, but it's better to be a year too early than a year too late.
Jordan Addison, as expected, 3-game suspension. I think that just kind of, we had talked about this earlier, leads me to think a little bit of a boost to TJ Hawkinson as long as he's healthy. I think Jefferson's still fine. Still not that thrilled about any of their other receivers, and I still have questions about their passing game. Well, definitely that would be another guy I'm watching in preseason as McCarthy. But how are you feeling about the suspension?
It's what we expected. So I think it was built into his value. There are several guys out there right now that, as you draft, you want to be careful. The Brandon Ayuk's, Chris Godwin's, Jordan Addison, Rashee Rice's. You don't want to, they all, the second half of the season could be super productive, but you don't want to necessarily grab a bunch of them in hopes that, they do, and sacrifice maybe some of that season-long production. Get yourself in a hole the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season because these guys either weren't ready because of injuries or they're serving suspensions. But I think it's okay to maybe try to find value on one of them, and especially if it's a short bench and you don't have an IR spot or that you can stash somebody in, then you probably don't want to. But if you're rostering 16 and in a start 9, maybe use one of those spots for one of those guys just to see how it sets up. And if you get to week 8 and nothing's happening, and Addison came back, but Jalen Naylor showed out well, and TJ Hawkinson basically established himself as the second option there, and JJ McCarthy is running a low passing volume offense because Mason and Jones are killing it on the ground. Then you move off of that guy, see what else what you can pick up off the waiver wire.
And then we'll end with a little bit of Chargers news. They brought back Keenan Allen at wide receiver, which seems good. But then today, Rashawn Slater, their starting left tackle, who just got a massive extension, tore his patella tendon, out for the year. I think that's going to be something of a massive blow for them.
It's a monstrous blow. I saw that he got injured, but I hadn't heard what actually happened. Patella tendon, a lot worse for receivers. I think we've seen that become the new career ender and with receivers. Slater feels like he has been snake bit. Very, very, very good tackle. But it seems like he's had a couple instances over his career that put him out a couple different times, and now this being a massive injury just isn't great. They're going to have to go out and figure out what's the depth chart look like, who's going to be available. Sorry, I'm trying to find my depth charts. Who's available out there is in free agency. Is there somebody that they can go grab and bring in and for lack, you hate to say just plug in, because it's not an easy position to play at left tackle. But right now, Trey Pipkins, he was a third rounder in 19. He's the backup there with Jamari Salyer, a sixth rounder in 22, is the backup to right tackle. But maybe they moved their last year's first round pick, Joe Alt, over to the left side and see what he can do, and then let a couple guys kind of fight it out for the right tackle spot. That might be an option.
Yep, we'll have to see what it does for them. It's very sad for me that a team in Denver's division would have suffered a blow like this. My pillow is wet.
You seem pretty broke up about it.
We will move on to tight ends, and we looked at 25. Dennis, I'll let you kick it off. Why don't you go 25? I think you said after 15. So why don't you do 25 to 15 then?
All right. So I got Jonnu Smith at 25. And I know he seems to be the new hotness in Pittsburgh because Arthur Smith is there. But really, the year he was in Atlanta with Arthur Smith, where'd my thing go? They had Kyle Pitts. That was 2023. He caught 50 passes for 582 yards. Let me see what that came out to. Tight end, that was 23. I'm going to kind of talk and stall here a little bit.
I'll
that
look
was
for you.
Tight end 17 is what that was. I got him at 25. I think that's a reasonably – I don't think tight end 17 is out of the question, but I think Pat Freiermuth is pretty established there. I think they'll use him a little more gadgety than traditional tight end. Will he have some productive weeks? I'm sure he will. Unless he all of a sudden, becomes Aaron Rodgers' go-to, I just don't see a path to consistent volume for him. I think it's going to be DK Metcalf deep, Calvin Austin short, and a lot of Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren. And then you've got Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith fighting it out at the tight end position. So I've got Jonnu. I really debated, was he even worth sticking in there over someone, say, like Elijah Arroyo, who seems to have a clear path to opportunity, or Dalton Schultz, who has the tight end room all to himself in Houston, or even Mason Taylor, another rookie. But Taylor seems like he's going to have a low volume offense with a quarterback that is going to run a lot. Tight end's a difficult position to transition. So they didn't make the cut, but I got Jonnu at 25. I got Mike Gesicki at 24. So we saw Gesicki have some real nice games last year. Chase Brown, I think, established himself pretty good as the go-to guy in the backfield. The thing with Gesicki, and by extension, Andre Iosivas, if Higgins and Chase are both healthy, there just doesn't seem to be even with Burrow throwing as much as he does, he hyper targets those top two stud receivers so much that there just doesn't seem to be enough consistent opportunity. Gesicki will have some games where he catches a touchdown and that bumps him up the rankings, or he breaks off a big play because he is athletic. They also added Noah Fant, who may dip into his targets a little bit. I don't expect a ton, but I got Gesicki at 24. Again, this like 15 to 25 is sort of a hot mess here. I got Darren Waller at 23. Who knows what's going to happen in Miami? Waller is really a glorified receiver. He bulked up and played tight end, but he was out of the league last year. He hasn't played a full season for several seasons. I think he's in a good situation. He's just going to need a lot of things to go right to be able to have high volume. And when you've got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane pretty much all in front of you for opportunity, I think he'll have some games where you're like, man, this is what we drafted him for. But it's going to be playing, here in the back end of these rankings, it's going to kind of be whack-a-mole. Like, am I able to get this guy in my starting lineup on the week he actually, puts up a tight end one game? 22, I got Cade Otton. Otton, oddly enough, if he didn't have so many great wide receivers on that team and such a good running game around him, if he could go somewhere where let's say if Tampa featured him as their third receiving option, he would just keep producing, because every time they need him, when they're like, oh shit, everybody's banged up, we need something, he'll go out and put up, 7 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, and just that can't seem like he can't be stopped. But when you've got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan and Emeka Egbuka and Bucky Irving and even Rachaad White, sometimes volume can be hard to come by. So I've got Otton at 22. Zach Ertz at 21. He's a guy that could move up if Terry McLaurin actually keeps holding out. But Ertz is in the catch and fall stage of his career. He's the safety blanket for Jaden Daniels. I think he'll catch some touchdowns. He's your quintessential, 4 for 40 tight end, 3 for 35 tight end. He's not going to get you a ton of yards after the catch. He still has the ability to get open in the short area, catch the quick hitters. But again, he's not going to. He isn't going to have. He long past are his 10 or 12 consistent target days. Number 20, I got Pat Freiermuth. I just think Freiermuth is a little more established in that Pittsburgh offense than Jonnu Smith is. I think he'll lead the tight ends in targets. Jonnu Smith is going to get some of the weird manufactured touches, some running the ball, some of the stuff like that. But I think Freiermuth is still going to be productive at the tight end position. He's not going to be a guy you can start every week or even most weeks, even in tight end premium leagues. He's a bench guy. All of these guys in traditional tight end leagues are guys that you're just picking up off the waiver wire on a bye week and hoping to get 6 points out of them. Number 19, I got Chig Okonkwo. He's a guy that could fly up the rankings. It's if Cam Ward steps up and starts to produce. If Cam Ward goes Bo Nix this year and kind of, I don't want to say catches everybody by surprise because he was the number 1 overall pick, but they don't have a lot of established presence at wide receiver outside of Calvin Ridley. They got a couple good backs in Pollard and Spears, but I think Spears is dinged up a little bit already. And neither one of them are going to –
consistent state.
Yeah. And neither one of those two guys are going to, be an 80 target guy. I think they could if they used them that way, but Pollard and Spears are basically the same back. So they're not in a platoon. They don't change the offense when one of them goes in. It isn't like, oh, Pollard's in here, they got a 75% chance to run. Oh, Spears is in here, 75% chance to pass. They just rotate them. And so that doesn't really affect what Okonkwo does. He's an athletic tight end who's suffered from inconsistent usage. The downside is, Callahan, as head coach, comes from the Cincinnati coaching tree there, Zach Taylor, and I don't know that he's necessarily going to all of a sudden start using the tight end a ton either. But opportunity could present itself. I mean, after Calvin Ridley, who is it they got? Chimera Dike, Alec Omenor, Van Jefferson, Tyler Lockett. So they got older guys, and they got some has-beens and some never-wases outside of Calvin Ridley. So there is opportunity for Okonkwo to earn the second most targets on this team. I wouldn't bet my house on it, but the opportunity is there. Number 18, I got Tyler Warren. If we knew what was going to happen in Indianapolis at the quarterback position, he could move 4 or 5 spots higher. And that would be if we knew they were going to throw the ball consistently and accurately and include the tight end. They've had several good wide receivers over the last couple of years with piss poor quarterback play. It looks like they're in line for another year of piss poor quarterback play with another group of pretty good wide receivers. They still got Pittman and Downs. Alec Pierce has looked good as a deep threat. Lots of glowing reports coming out of camp about A.D. Mitchell. I almost feel like we could see Michael Pittman get moved if Pierce starts to show out even more in camp, because he's the one that's going to be, wanting the most money. He's the one that's established. It would be interesting to see if they move him somewhere out of division, out of conference, and see what they can get for him, and let Pierce and Downs and A.D. Mitchell, along with Tyler Warren and Jonathan Taylor, kind of be the dogs in that offense. Number 17, I got Jake Ferguson. He's the number 3 option there in Dallas on a team that's going to throw the ball a lot and I don't think their running game as of right now, I don't think you can say confidently that it's as good as last year with Rico Dowdle, who's the backup in Carolina now. So Ferguson looks like he's in line for 80 to 90 targets, and that could be pretty productive. Could move him up into the tight end 1 range if he converts and catches a decent amount of touchdowns. And then at number 16, I got Colston Loveland. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Colston Loveland could also be outside the top 25. Cole Kmet could decide, I'm not giving it up that easy. Caleb Williams could shit the bed. DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and DeAndre Swift could dominate the offensive touches. There are a lot of different directions that Chicago Bears offense could go, or it could just end up still being bad, even though they brought in the wonderkin Ben Johnson. So I've got Loveland here, but again, this kind of ends where I'm, 16 really starts where I'm not very comfortable with the tight end position.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you started talking about Pittman, I was looking. He did just sign a big money extension, so there would be a lot of dead money to move him, and he just got his big payday. So I would think it'd be one of the other ones, except for Josh Downs, they must have taken him pretty late, but he's on an incredibly cheap deal, and they still have like $20 million in cap space. I don't know that they'll be motivated to move anyone for that reason. I think it's potential in the offseason if they ended up blowing things up. But I obviously have some different players than you in here, and I have some different players that didn't make my 25 than you. Listening to you talk, I had second guessing, and I think that's just this tight end group. I think it's from like about 14 or 15 until 40. you could convince me of anything, and I shuffled people around. So this is what I'm going with for now. At 25, I have Chigakonkwo. They have a ton of receivers, not a lot of incredible receivers. He was only tight end 21 last year. I don't know what that passing game is going to be like. So that's kind of where I left him. I do have actually 4 rookies in my top 25, and in this chunk, the first of those is Elijah Arroyo. I put him up at 24. Tight end in a Kubiak Shanahan offense is actually a pretty good position, and I think that a lot of the reason they let go, I thought Noah Fant was potentially in line for a sneaky decent season. I think a lot of the reason they let him go is what they've saw with Arroyo, so I have him sneaking just in there. I know Barner's going to be in there some, but I think he's going to end up being their best tight end. I do have Mason Taylor at 23, just in there, and part of it's just because I think the Jets receivers suck outside of Garrett Wilson. No Garrett Wilson slander, but if I had a choice between dumping it off to the corpse of Alan Lazard and Josh Reynolds or Mason Taylor, I'd probably go to Taylor. Tight ends can be a quarterback's best friend too. I like the potential there. I have Pat Freiermuth at 22. I've gone back and forth about how I feel about Pittsburgh's tight ends. I think they're going to eat into each other. I don't think either of them are going to be particularly high, but I think the reason that even though they have no receivers, they made it a point to trade for a different tight end is because Arthur Smith is not particularly pleased with how Pat Freiermuth works in that offense, even though I think he's probably a better player. I think they're going to mix in Darnell Washington too. I don't have him in my 25, but I think that's just more targets. And part of me wonders, we have not traditionally seen Aaron Rodgers be a big tight end guy, but if he's looking out there and doesn't find any actual NFL wide receivers, maybe he'll become one in his older age. I have Brenton Strange at 21. Another team that I have questions about the passing game. I have no question about Brian Thomas Jr. I think Travis Hunter is going to be a big contributor. So I think both of them, go in over, and Strange is going to end up splitting targets with running backs and De'Ami Brown. And so low end tight end too is where, but if he finished higher, would I be shocked? No. You could convince me, as I said, of pretty much anything of tight end 14 to 40, any range of outcomes. I have Darren Waller at tight end 20. I've mentioned I thought Miami was a little bit of a dumpster fire. I hope that he can get back into the swing of things and stay healthy. Jonnu Smith in that offense I think he was tight end 5 or 6 last year. Let me look it up. He might have been lower than that. No, he was tight end 4 last year in that offense. So I don't think tight end 20 is unreasonable, but we'll see how it all shakes out. Then at tight end 19, I have Jonnu Smith. As you mentioned, he was tight end 17. Kyle Pitts was actually tight end 13 or 14 the year that they were together. They peppered them both with targets. I've come back around to having Smith higher than Freiermuth. I think they're both going to have a role, and they're both going to kind of cannibalize each other.
And Smith was 17 that year.
Yeah, so I have that both lower than where they were the last time, but anything could happen. I have Colston Loveland at 18, the third of the rookie tight ends. There was a lot of mouths to feed in Chicago, but we were both pretty high on Caleb Williams. I think that passing offense could be pretty good. Jake Ferguson at 17. I think he's going to be solid, but CeeDee Lamb's going to get a ton of volume. I think they're going to use Pickens. And I think they're going to work in some of the other receivers. It's probably Ferguson and Tolbert, some other guys competing for targets. I have Warren at 16. I'm starting to wonder if Warren isn't going to be more involved, heavily underneath to the detriment of a Josh Downs, because Downs actually finished as their highest receiver last year, probably because they were checking it off that much. And I would not be shocked to see Richardson or Daniel Jones follow a similar path. It's impossible to know what to make. You're right. I read that story about Adonai Mitchell being the next great star, and like, well, I don't know who they think's throwing him the ball, but that'll be another one to watch. Anthony Richardson's healthy enough to start the first preseason game. Daniel Jones starting the second preseason game. That might be the saddest quarterback competition we have to watch outside of Cleveland. So it'll be interesting. And then I have Cade Otton at 15. I know you had him lower. There are a lot of weapons in Tampa Bay. That gives me pause, but he seemed to have a good groove and a good rapport with Baker Mayfield. And as guys are floating in and out of the lineup, he was pretty steady. I mean, there were several weeks in the middle of the season where he was tight end 1 overall. So I think he's still going to be a big part of what they do. You know, if he finished tight end 25, would I be shocked? No, I think that's the nature of this group. Why don't you give us 14-7?
All right. 15-7.
14-7, because I think you did.
I stopped at 16.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So, well, I've got Brenton Strange at 15. I just feel like there's going to be an opportunity for him to step into an established role there. With Evan Ingram moved on, you know they're bringing in Travis Hunter, De'Ami Brown, quote unquote, looks great. Brian Thomas Jr.'s going in the first round, early second round in drafts at the latest. Trevor Lawrence has to have at least one breakout year, doesn't he? You know, I feel like this might be it.
He doesn't have to have a breakout year.
So I got Brenton Strange at 15. At 14, I got Dallas Goedert. You know, they basically did everything except, look, we'll pay you to take him this offseason, and they just couldn't move him. I don't know why they wanted to move him. He seems to fit that offense great. Super productive, super reliable. I get it. You've got Saquon Barkley. You've got A.J. Brown. You've got Devonta Smith. You know, he's the fourth option there at best, but he's consistent, and he's going to get – and that's if you don't count Jalen Hurts running the ball. He's going to get a fairly good number of targets, and he'll be a red zone threat at 6'5". Their offensive line is very good, so it's not like they have to consistently keep him in blocking. He can get plenty of routes. So I got Goddard at 14. 13, I've got Hunter Henry. You know, he developed some chemistry with Drake May last year. I feel like the Patriots are going to be better. And while Austin Hooper was probably a little more productive than I would have liked last year, I still think Henry is a solid receiver and red zone threat. Stephon Diggs is probably the top pass receiving option there without hesitation. They brought in an explosive running back in Travion Henderson, but I think Henry's role is solid. And then at number 12, I'm getting a little squirrely here, still going with Kyle Pitts. It just feels like, well, the injury a couple years ago sapped a little bit of his athleticism. He's still pretty athletic. He's 6'6". He can catch the ball well. They've got Bijan Robinson and Drake London. Darnell Mooney's banged up right now. But I feel like his role is established. He's their pass-catching tight end. Can Michael Penix bring that production to fruition? You know, we've seen him have a 1,000-yard season. We've seen him have did he do the Mike Williams? 1,000 yards one year, double-digit touchdowns the next. Something he had.
He's never had double-digit touchdowns, but he did have 1,000 yards his rookie year. He's not come close to that since.
So I'm going to roll the dice on Kyle Pitts one more time at tight end 12. Number 11, I got Dalton Kincaid. They wanted to use him a lot more last year. He got banged up, and so they couldn't really feature him like they wanted. He's healthy now. You know, they're waiting on Keon Coleman to break out. Khalil Shakir has his established role in the short area, but he's nursing an injury right now. James Cook is standing on business and trying to get a new contract, but they like Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. So it feels like Kincaid is really the one guy that there's a concrete plan to get volume to. So I've got him at 11. Number 10, I got Tucker Kraft. Just feels like over the years, last several years, there have been a lot of pretty good guys in the receiving core in Green Bay. But Tucker Kraft stepped up, and while Luke Musgrave was drafted higher, a la Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst, Tucker Kraft has taken a hold of that receiving role at the tight end position. He's been the most consistent receiver of all those wide receivers and tight ends. And I think he's got strong chemistry with Jordan Love. They've got a great running game with Josh Jacobs. But I think Tucker Kraft will check in as a top 10 tight end. Number 9, I'm going to roll with your guy, Evan Ingram. I think Sean Payton brought him there for a reason. He's not there to block. And, they got Cortland Sutton. And then it's like, who consistently of their other wide receivers is going to step up and take a role? I like the pairing of R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins and A.E.I.O.U. In the backfield. But I don't know that any of them are really that established that Ingram isn't going to be able to get consistent production. Number 8, I got Mark Andrews. It feels like it's a shock to me to have him all the way down at number 8. He's been consistently, top 3 to 5 tight end in projections, and as long as he stays healthy. But I do think we're seeing a little bit of the changing of the guard there in Baltimore. We'd probably feel a lot different if Andrews hadn't dropped that pass last year. I think we'd feel safer. But Isaiah Likely's playing well, and whenever Andrews has been out the last couple of years, Likely has produced. We know they like Charlie Kolar, so they go 3 deep at the tight end position. They've beefed up the receiving group. They like Rashad Bateman a ton. They use him in the red zone. Zay Flowers, if he stays healthy all year, he's the number 1. And then they brought in the veteran DeAndre Hopkins. So they have kind of a varied group of wide receivers. And then you pile on top of that with Lamar Jackson's running ability and the King Derrick Henry. It feels like Mark Andrews' opportunity is shrinking. And then let's see, are we stopping at 8 or am I going to 7?
You're going through 7.
Okay. Number 7, I got David Njoku. This could be a hot mess given the quarterback situation, but I feel like it's going to be Flacco. And we saw a couple years ago when Flacco was there, he loved him some David Njoku. Jerry Jeudy had a breakout year last year. Cedric Tillman had a breakout month last year. It feels like they've got a solid receiving group. The Quinshon Judkins incident has sort of taken their running back group down a notch. They drafted Harold Fannin, who I don't expect a lot from Fannin the next couple of years. He'll have a game here or there where he looks great, gets opportunity. But as long as Njoku's healthy, he's signed an extension here in the last year or two, and he's still pretty young. So as long as he's healthy, they love him in Cleveland and they want to keep him around. So I'd expect Njoku to be there for 2 or 3 more years at least, and we'll see what happens when he gets to the end of that contract. Fannin could be his successor. Maybe Fannin isn't. But they've got Njoku. So I kind of have my top 11 broken into some tiers with, what is it, tier 4, Tucker Kraft and Dalton Kincaid at tight end 10 and 11. Tier 3 is David Njoku, Mark Andrews, and Evan Ingram. So, if you shuffled them around within that tier, I don't think that's out of line. So depending on how they're coming off the board, if Njoku gets drafted in the 7th round and Mark Andrews is there in the 8th, I think you're perfectly good drafting him, or even Evan Ingram in the 9th. If you're willing to wait on those later rounds, there's definitely an elite tier of tight ends, but then there's some pretty good tight ends you can wait on and still be productive in your drafts.
So for me at 14, I have Zach Ertz. He was tight end 7 last year. He was a real chemistry with Jaden Daniels, and I think with all that's going on with McLaurin, they brought in Deebo Samuel, but I think Ertz is still going to be a big part of what they want to do. I have Dallas Goedert at 13. I agree with you. I think he's going to get the volume. I almost had him in the 12, but I rearranged. I have Kyle Pitts at 12 too. Hope never dies. If not now, when? This is the end of his rookie year, and he could be, one of those guys that blossoms more in his second stop. But I think there's a potential for him, especially with Mooney banged up, and it's hard to imagine they want to give Ray McLeod 87 targets again. It's hard for me to imagine anyway. Probably not hard for McLeod's mother to imagine. I have Evan Ingram at 11. I don't feel good about it. I didn't like that signing, so we'll see how it works out. Dalton Kincaid at 10. We talked about he was actually second on the Bills in targets by a wide margin last year. Had 75 targets that just, with some injuries and missed some time. They were trying to get him going, trying to make him a focus. Makes me nervous that he got dinged up not once but twice today in camp. But, I want to have that energy. It also made me nervous when I watched Hard Knocks, and Dawson Knox was one of the star players that they focused on Hard Knocks. I was like, I've made a horrible mistake, but I'm sticking to it. I have Tucker Kraft at 9. I like what he does and his role with the Packers. I have Njoku at 8 and Mark Andrews at 7. I could see them going in reverse order. I think they're both pretty good, and just have them just a notch below the top 6. You and I have the same 6 players in the top 6, but in a slightly different order. So why don't you give your order first?
All right. So number 6, I got Travis Kelce. He could be tight end 1. He could be tight end 6. I don't think he's going to be outside the top 6. He's still going to have he's still going to, I think, dominate opportunities. He's got 3 very good, very fast wide receivers there. Isaiah Pacheco looks good, but there's definitely chemistry between Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Number 5, I've got TJ Hawkinson. I expect he's going to get off to a hot start with Jordan Addison out. I know Jalen Naylor will step into that Addison role, but I think Hawkinson will be the safety blanket for McCarthy. Again, I don't know that I expect a ton of volume from the Vikings passing game, but I don't think we expected a ton last year from Sam Darnold, and O'Connell made him look like a world beater. So anything could happen. Number 4, I got Sam Laporta. We saw in his rookie year how good he could be. Detroit's success is going to come down to how the old offensive line holds up. They do have some older guys. Will Tate Ratledge be able to step in at the center position and not miss a beat? Can Taylor Decker stay healthy? Are they going to need to move Penei Sewell? Who's going to fill in for Kevin Zeitler at guard? Will they be able to get through that? Because I think their defense, they lost second-year man, or maybe he's a rookie, Enos Rakestraw for the year.
Yeah.
They needed to build that defense, and they're doing what they can to beef it up. They spent a lot of draft capital on it. But you've got Aiden Hutchinson coming off an injury and Ali McNeil coming off an injury. There's talk they're going to re-sign Zadarius Smith, which they probably will. It feels like it's a situation of Zadarius just trying to avoid training camp. But I think Laporta has every bit of an opportunity to be a high volume tight end in Detroit. So that's my second tier: Laporta, Hawkinson, and Kelsey. So you can kind of shuffle them any way you want, but that's how I got them. Number 3, I got Trey McBride. I know he had a great year last year, and I expect him to have a great year again this year. The big rub for me is I think Marvin Harrison takes a step. I think Kyler Murray is still the same quarterback, so I think Harrison's production cuts into that volume there with Trey McBride. Again, I think he's still going to have a great year. Tight end 3 is nothing to sneeze at. It's just that it's Kyler Murray throwing him the ball, and we all know where the ceiling's at there. Number 2, I got Brock Bowers. He's going to be the number 1 option in Las Vegas. Oh, kept wanting to say Oakland, but Las Vegas. They've got who is it? Jacoby Myers is their de facto wide receiver 1, who's really a wide receiver 2, but he seems to just keep producing consistently. Jack Besh they signed. They've got Trey Tucker. And there's somebody else there that I keep forgetting. Besh was a rookie.
Deontay Thornton.
Oh, Dante Thornton. Yeah, he has, by all accounts, looked great. He's a big speedster. And so I think he may be able to produce a little bit. And then they got Ashton Genty. So I think they're going to be more efficient running the ball this year. I like the move to Geno. Geno's a very good passer. And at number 1, I got George Kittle. I just think with a lot of the uncertainty around the San Francisco receiving game, Ayuk's going to be out to start the season. Juwan Jennings is unhappy. Who's the other guy? Ricky Pearsall seems to keep picking up soft tissue injuries and missing practices and the occasional game here and there. We'll see what happens. Christian McCaffrey's coming back. McCaffrey could be running back 1, or he could play 4 snaps. I don't think either one of them are outlandish, though I do expect McCaffrey to have a good year this year. If I'm in Dynasty, I'm hoping he comes out hot and I can move off of him for some value for somebody that I do roster him in a couple spots. And he's that guy that you're almost looking at now thinking this guy is going to, if I can't get good volume, he's just going to retire on my team. So my top tier, George Kittle, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride.
So for me, I have TJ Hawkinson at 6. I think he looks like he's back healthy, going to be probably the number 2 target behind Jefferson at the beginning, maybe throughout. We'll have to see how that shakes out. I have Travis Kelce at 5. I think he's still a big part of what the Chiefs do. Laporta at 4. I have Kittle at 3. You make a decent argument, and he definitely could be the big focus for the 49ers passing game. We'll have to see. But then I have McBride at 2 and Bowers at 1, how they finished last year. And I actually think that was the order of finish for the top 3 last year was Bowers, McBride, Kittle. They all averaged more than 15.5 points per game. So they're all really explosive in there. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them as your tight end option. Especially in redraft, I think you're going to be feeling pretty good, and you may feel better about them than your wide receiver 2 or your running back 2, which is probably because you have to take them high up in drafts to get to that spot. Before we get out of here, a couple of questions. Who is the biggest riser at tight end for you?
That was a tough one for me because they all kind of aren't too far out. I think probably Evan Ingram, because I had such low expectations of him last year. He's probably my biggest riser. Njoku rose a few spots. I think I had him closer to tight end 11 or 12. So it's probably I'm gonna go with Evan Ingram.
think for me it's Tucker Kraft. I don't remember having him in the top 12 last year, and I didn't, and we weren't sure whether it was going to be him or Luke Musgrave doing, you know, doing better. I had him. I actually, it looks like I had Kraft, but this time last year just outside my top 25. So he definitely flew up the boards. Had a great finish. Who's your biggest faller?
Probably, gosh, I don't, of the guys that I think are really relevant, it's probably Mark Andrews, and he only dropped about 4 spots for me. But having him down at tight end 8, maybe Dalton Kincaid, I think I might have had him up there about 6 or 7 as well. I got him at 11. There wasn't. I don't feel like there was a ton of shakeup in my tight end ranks. Just a little bit, few people moving here and there.
For me, it's Taysom Hill, because he had been pretty solid in that jack of all trades role with the previous 2 New Orleans administrations, and right around that tight end, low end tight end 1 pretty consistently. And last year the wheels fell off, and I don't even think I have him in my top 50 this year. He's really an afterthought. Who is one player outside of the top 25 that you think could make a leap?
And probably,
Sorry, a lot of these guys, want to go 225.
A lot of these guys need things to fall just right. I think Mason Taylor, he's going to have opportunity, but will Justin Fields be able to make it happen? Theo Johnson feels like he's going to be able to step right into that, be that starting tight end, but is there enough going on in that quarterback room to make him valuable? Elijah Arroyo, I think he's got a path to opportunity. Is it gonna happen? I think I'm gonna say Arroyo. You've got him at 24. I probably should have had him in my top 25 based on what his opportunity looks like. But it's also kind of easy to go, we haven't seen Sam Darnold be great or even good 2 years in a row. So,
well, and we could be picking the wrong tight end to break out. I did consider whether maybe it is AJ Barn. I just think it's Arroyo. So sticking with my guns, Arroyo, the guy that this offensive team drafted anyway. The one I have, you have him at tight end 13. I had him at tight end 26, and that's Hunter Henry. And no shade against Henry. He was a very important piece for them last year, but they couldn't get anything going at wide receiver. They were really inconsistent at running back. They brought Josh McDaniels in. I think they've greatly improved their wide receiver group, and they've added more weapons at running back. I think they're going to be spreading the ball around a lot more. I think that means less opportunities for Hunter Henry. So I just had him. I just kept dropping him down lower, but you could end up being right. He was tight end. I think he was tight end 11 during the tenure of Drake May as the starter. He actually was worse at the beginning of the year with Brissett when I went and looked at the splits. So I was like, well, maybe I will end up being wrong. It feels like they invested a lot in wide receivers, and, especially, adding some running back weapons. I think they're going to spread the ball around a lot and try to get things going and try to run the ball more and be a little more dynamic than what we've seen them on offense the last couple of years. But Hunter Henry has definitely been the best part of their passing game for the last 2 or 3 years. So, like I said, between tight end 15 and 40, I probably could be convinced or talked into any range of outcome. I'm glad we're done with tight ends. It feels like every year it's the hardest crapshoot to go through. And this year, no different. Next week, we will be having running back week. We will be back on Tuesday with 50 to 26, and then we will be doing the top 25 on Wednesday next week. We will be doing back-to-back days because of some scheduling things, so just something to keep track of. We will also touch on whatever excitement we get out of the preseason. We'll probably each give 2 or 3 preseason performances from the weekend that caught our eye and made us excited because
look at you assigning me homework again.
Time to get it. Well, you usually have 2 or 3 guys that you're excited about and fired up about after the preseason. I'm sure, like me, you're going to watch a few of those games. But Dennis, if people outside of preseason jonesing need something to fill their time, what can they do?
They can do what I'm sure you do. Go to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a subscribe, give us a like, download. You don't have to listen, but download.
I mean, if you don't listen, though, you miss like the jokes that I make about the Browns leadership during the draft. I mean, those are words of wisdom you can't pass up on. That'll do it for us today. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the first full weekend of preseason football. We'll be back on Tuesday and Wednesday talking running backs.